And so just bear with us for 2 seconds as we get a couple of final things taken. Again, one last time, just want to welcome everybody to today's call. Today's focus is on the staffing for accelerated growth concept. At some point, we all reach in our businesses a ceiling of capacity that we cannot break through because there just are simply not enough man hours in the day. I mean, whether it's 5 loans or 8 loans or 10 loans, we all begin to stretch that ceiling of limitation. And what happens as we begin to stretch that ceiling is we you start working harder and harder, and you get less and less productive and effective. And what you end up finding yourself doing often in this business is what we call the peaks and valleys syndrome. I mean, rarely do we ever see loan officers without a whole lot of back-end support be able to get significantly beyond the 8 loan a month mark. But the reality is it's never really 8 loans a month. I mean, it's 8 months in a peak month and 2 or 3 in a slow month if you don't have any back-end support. If you've got decent back-end or processing support provided by the company, maybe that ceiling is at 8 to 9 loans a month. But again, it's never 8 loans a month consistently every month, month in, month out, unless you're just a master of time management, balancing how much time you spend on the various different hats we all have to wear in this business. It usually ends up being 12 or 13 or 14 one month and 5 or 6 the next. And again, you start doing this seesaw effect. So today, what Stephanie's going to be bringing to you is the concepts, ideas, and strategies it takes to successfully go from 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 50, or whatever volume you want to build to in your production practice. So whether you're looking at growing a team for your own production support, or whether you're in a management role, area sales or regional or branch sales manager, and you're trying to recruit and hire a production loan officer team, Stephanie's got some amazing stuff to share with you today. So I'm going to introduce Coach Stephanie York. And Steph, go ahead and take it and run with it, all right?
Okay, Eric, thank you so much for the introduction. And staffing and having the right team on board is definitely a passion of mine. I'm very excited to be talking about this today. So we are going to talk a little bit about production, but predominantly this particular webinar is going to be about techniques to use in growing, deciding to grow your team. So that's primarily what we're going to be focused on. So I want to talk a little bit about note-taking suggestions, because I've talked to people after a webinar and they didn't really take the notes they wanted to, and they forgot some things. I say just get a blank piece of paper, and if something is referenced that you like, if it's a term, if it's an idea, just get it down on paper. And some people take too many notes, but I know some people don't take notes. They think they're going to get all they need to out of listening to the call. You're here for a reason. You want to know some of this information. Write out questions you may have for us to answer. If something doesn't make sense, or you want to tweak the question so that we can answer it specifically for your situation, write that out during the webinar, and that way during the Q&A at the end, we'll be able to give you some really solid answers based on what you need, okay? And we're going to be really interacting with others at the end of the call to answer some of those questions. Teams come in a lot of different sizes, and I'm sure the people that are on the call right now work in anything from the small office or even, let's say, small office is you by yourself. And we're going to talk a little bit about self-management at the end of this call. So 3 to 5 people we consider a small team. 6 to 10 people is a small group. 11 to 20 is a small company. And the dynamics that take hold as you get into all these different sizes can really measure how much you're going to be able to assess success. Either it's working or it's not. We will address how you can get in your own team's way in a smaller configuration. Hint, delegation is a key when there's just fewer people. The 3 to 5 people teams are much more symbiotic. You're more likely to be dependent on each member doing their specific job for the team to be successful. Another hindrance to that team is not just delegation again, but also poor job descriptions and poor communication. In a team of 3 to 5 people, and maybe yourself as a loan officer, you have a transaction coordinator, you have a processor, or a different role in there somewhere, if you're not meeting regularly and communicating success and opportunities, that's really going to hinder the success of that size team. A 6 to 10 person team is going to be a powerhouse. Often when you have a team of this size and larger, you have several people with the same personality type. This can lead to competition or dominance issues. These need to be handled. And you as the manager of a team that size need to create a more cooperative environment. We're going to talk a little bit about that later on as well. And at 11 to 20 and larger, you're dealing with tiers of management or self-managed groups / teams. Now you're managing the managers. And, aren't we all adults here? But in the same respect, I'm going to give you some tips and ideas on how to manage or teach managed groups to be self-managed themselves. So it's a huge group of topics. I'm going to brush over a lot of stuff. Most of these things could have their own webinar, honestly. The 5 steps to building teams. We want to really make sure that you understand this webinar is serving as a high-level overview. Each of these different team shapes and sizes needs its own webinar, but we will cover key concepts. And I don't want you to, for a second, think that your particular team size isn't important, because it is. But again, take notes, and at the end, let's talk about your team and get you some solutions as well. Okay? So the 5 concepts that we're talking about are job description and what we're going to do to build a team off these 5. Delegation, communication, competition culture, and managing managers, which I just spoke about on the last slide. Just kind of like adjusting your belt when you gain or lose weight. We all had a great Thanksgiving, I hope. You must also adjust the components of the team as it grows. And we'll be going through all 5 of these topics in the next several slides. Again, please write down what applies to you and any big question marks you may have. Okay, first we're going to touch on job description. And the current job description needs to be in place for every single role on your team. You need to know what are all the activities of your business, who's responsible for these activities, and does every team member know their role? Have you delegated and given the information to the individual? Has the role activities for each team member been communicated to them? We're going to give you, as part of this webinar, a job design worksheet, and it's in Excel, and we're going to give it to you so that you can start to really delineate between you, the manager, your activities, what you're doing, what you need to give to somebody else. What are low payoff activities? What are you doing every day that you shouldn't be doing? You shouldn't be making copies. You shouldn't be making your own coffee. But you should be really looking at what do you need to do to continue to grow success, and what do you need to delegate, and have you delegated it? So the worksheet that we're going to give you is helping you understand what are all the activities that you need done, who's doing them, is it a part of their job description, does every team member know what they're responsible for, and has the roles, activities for each team member been communicated to them, and have they signed an actual copy of what they're supposed to do? We need that commitment from the team members. The daily activities exercise is one that we are offering on the team design worksheet, and you're going to go through and look at what your return on investment of time is on everything you do. It takes a little bit of time to work on. Some people say that they want to learn how to hand off work without having to do the work themselves. I'm telling you, if you do the daily activities exercise once a week for a month, you will clean out your activity calendar and delegate correctly to everybody that needs to do this so that you can get more business and do what your job is. Okay? So the next thing that we're going to look at is delegation. And in delegation, we want to make sure that we, is the number one problem for everyone who starts becoming a manager. So it's first-time employees. It's sometimes when you hire on a second person. Maybe your first hire is the processor that the company has handed to you. You're in charge of managing them a little bit. Maybe this is the second person. You get your own transaction coordinator. You're responsible for hiring training. But you need to analyze what you do now that is low payoff. And I hope you guys are taking notes on this. Make a detailed list of how to accomplish these items. You're basically building the job description for the new hire you're bringing on board. Or you're building a job description for the team member that the company is giving you. And then you want to meet with that staff and delegate to them in detail those activities that they're going to need to do going forward. Essentially, you're handing them your job description for them. You also need to be able to explain to them in detail how to do these activities and make sure that they understand and sign off on those activities. I tell all of my clients, if you're going to bring in a new hire, you need to know what they're going to do for the first 5 days they're working there, because you cannot be sitting around delegating to them. If you're busy enough to need a new employee, you need to know what they're going to do. And 5 days is a minimum. It could mean, hey, go sit with the processor for half a day, watch what they're doing. It could be go through old files. It could be watch these videos on my databasing system. It could be sit with me in a call on a lead. But you need to know what those things are and describe them to them. The last thing down here is I want you to schedule a follow-up with that employee, and it could be the next day. It's definitely got to be once a week, to assess the success they're having with their job description. How are they using what you've given them? Are they following it? Then a really great way for you to give up control of those things that, well, you haven't had to give to anybody else before. And we all know that you're the master of managing your business. You need to give up and delegate. You should create checklists. So if you want to make sure somebody understands the correct file stacking order, you give them a file stacking checklist. And then you let them stack a file. You come back. You make sure they're using your checklist. If you see that they're doing really well on the checklist part and they're following through on what you're asking them to do and they do it consistently and repeatedly, you're going to have faith that they're going to do it correctly, and you'll be able to give up that activity far more easily than if you just ask them to do that with no checklist or system in place to check up on them. So write down any questions you have about delegation, because I'm sure that there's more that we're going to cover on that topic going forward. Next is communication. This is critical. I get a lot of new people that I start coaching with. They have a team, and they don't meet with their team once a week, let alone once a day. And everybody's working, independently of each other. And that is not a good way to manage your team. You've got to be the leader. You've got to set an example. And I'm not saying you've got to sit on top of them and put your thumb on them, but you're in this together, and you're relying on them to do their job. You've got to get these meetings into a calendar and make sure the team knows these are mandatory. Your team must understand you're in control, limit their interruptions of your time, make sure they know how and when to communicate with you. And what I mean by that is controlling communication. I'm going to be busy from 9 a.m. until 11 a.m. Don't come in with interruptions. Save everything, and we'll meet at 11 a.m. and go over everything you have a question about. Create structure for communications with types and times. So maybe they're sending you 50 emails a day. Well, they need to save up all the information and send you one email an hour, or one email for the first half of the day and one email for the last half. They're going to communicate with you in a way they think is successful until you set structures for that communication. And then you want to always encourage them. If they do something the way you want them to, acknowledge that and acknowledge what they've done right. And you can do that verbally. You can go buy them, a muffin or buy them lunch or a gift certificate, but it's really important to encourage the success and encourage them for when they're doing things right. So something we want off of this is regular team meetings. A lot of my people who are super busy bring their transaction coordinator in at 9 a.m. They have a 5 to 10-minute meeting, and then they don't communicate again until afternoon because that person's trained and they're doing their job, and everybody's on the same track. You create priorities for the day. The manager is managing and leading. Transaction coordinator has a definition for what she needs to do, and it's really powerful if you do it the right way. Okay? Next, this is a quote that I like to tell my people. If you're not in control of your calendar, your time, and your communications with your staff, then how can you expect them to take it serious? And the reason I bring this up is I've got a lot of managers who are kind of loose-oriented managers. They like to let the adults run their own show, and they hire people. But if you want to grow your team, you've got to take a leading role, and you've got to control your calendar. You've got to control your time and your communication if you're going to expect them to do it as well. So those of you who are not making time blocking to get effective things done, not communicating correctly, or you're communicating inefficiently or unprofessionally, that's going to show with your staff. So you need to make sure that you're doing all the right things as well. And if you have any questions about how to do them better, please let me know, and we can definitely talk about it at the end here or at a later date. Now, I wanted to talk really quickly about competition and cooperation. Many teams, especially larger ones, face a certain amount of competition. All teams require cooperation. It's why you hired them to begin with. To set a team up with better improved competition and cooperation, you must follow a few steps. This may not apply to people who are on their own or with people who have maybe one or two other additional team people, or it might. Just pay attention and take notes. These simple steps can help to create a bond amongst the team. You won't be done after you take these steps, but kind of the groundwork is there to build on. First, have something fun for the new group or an older group with a new member to do. This could be a lunch, a round robin, who are you, where are you from event. It should be all social, no work, and if all possible, off-site. It gives everyone the chance to see what they have in common and to bond. And it's a good idea for you to do this more than once a year, maybe at least twice a year. What it does, and what I'm studying in one of my classes right now, it allows the human part of us to lock in on common denominators so that we feel like we've congealed as a team. You need to let them have a little bit of fun because their personality styles are often very different, and if they can connect on a human level, it really will bring everybody together. Next, you want to create something called a team charter. This is like a business plan, but it states very, very clearly what they all want to accomplish in their role and as a team. You're going to lead creating this charter. You get everyone's buy-in and have them all agree to their share and the team goal, and then you get signatures. Now they've bonded on a much larger scale, and next you're going to separate the meetings for you to go over with them. The entire team at the same time, everyone's job description. You want everybody to know what each other's roles are. Let them all know this is a big pie and everyone has their slice of it to take care of. With everyone on board, the whole thing works. With one person not understanding their goals or the team charter, that's when dysfunction happens. And you need to make sure that they all know that they're all really important and make sure they sign the team charter. Always, there should be a forum at the end of every meeting that you have, a discussion period where certain topics to add can be brought up. More open meetings where everyone's able to express opinions. You as the manager are in charge of managing and leading that team. So obviously an open meeting isn't just where everybody can complain. This isn't a get it off, off your chest time. If there's negative feelings, we want to side table those and say, let's talk about opportunities and discuss solutions. Right now we want to talk about how we feel about the topics of this meeting. We don't want to let those meetings get off track, and they shouldn't be very long. You don't want them to interfere with business. So if anybody has any questions about how to run a meeting and set up a charter for their group and help to create a more competitive, less competitive in a negative way, and more cooperative environment, please just take notes and ask at the end. Okay, next we're going to talk about competition and goal confusion. A lot of times when we have groups, and this is going to go for my people who have maybe larger groups, and for people who are self-managed and by themselves right now, maybe they don't have team members, you're probably dealing with competition and goal confusion amongst other people in your office. Sometimes an unhealthy environment exists. Unhealthy competition is often created when team members are confused about goals and roles. Maybe the manager managing your office, or if you are managing an office or a region, you haven't communicated what the goals are very clearly and what the roles everybody has are and who is going to assist who. We want to make sure that we know very clearly what everybody's role is within your organization so that they can be held accountable for it, and those who are trying to put more on others can be held accountable for theirs. I'll go right straight back to socialization of new team members. I'll go right back to the team charter. That's going to stop goal confusion. If you have a team of salespeople Or if you're meeting with a bunch of managers that are handling your region, if you create a charter that they agree to, they will then disseminate that charter to their people. If it's an office full of loan officers and everybody signs the charter that we're all here to build the best business that we possibly can, and we want ABC Mortgage Company to be the best in the area, we want to own every mortgage, well then you create more of an us against them branding by referencing this charter. And it really helps them understand that we're not against each other here. We're against all of them out there. We want their business. And it helps create a healthy external competition without adding to internal competition. And once again, let me know if anybody on the call has any questions about situations that they're having, whether you're feeling like you're in an unhealthy competition environment or it has been created and you don't know what to do about it. I have some really great reward programs that can help diffuse unhealthy competition and create a much more cooperative, competitive environment. Okay, so now we want to go on to managing managers. This is maybe not for everybody, but I think those of you who are self-managed can learn from this as well. This is a time when you may have taken on a new role and you started a bigger company. This is a challenge that can be very rewarding and exhausting at the same time. It's sometimes like herding cats. We've got a lot of great personalities in this business. God bless them, and sometimes it's hard to manage them. But it can work out very much like a team management. If you group all the managers together and treat them like the team, you're going to go a long way. Now your team members have their own team, so working on creating branding and a charter that they can take back to their teams is a great way to help them manage. Clearly define what the goals are for the group's charter. Look at the numbers and set goals. How many recruits do they want to bring in? What staffing will they need to meet the numbers that they're projecting they're going to make next year? How would operations need to grow or change to support that production? Get the promises they make to the charter or brand, put this on paper, and have all the managers sign it. We've got their buy-in. Then they can take their buy-in back to their teams. And we want to constantly have follow-up meetings with the managers as well, which you should be doing. After everybody signs it, it becomes a social contract. The difference is a business plan they hand in to you that's never talked about, or a team meeting where everyone lays out what they're promising to do in front of each other. Those things can be very impactful one-on-one. If you have a manager who is maybe lagging behind and not feeling really leader-like, having a one-on-one business plan meeting with him as his manager is very productive. But we're talking at a much bigger scope, building a larger team. Absolutely getting everybody to buy in is a very powerful event, and we really want to make sure that they're branding and chartering their own team. Next, we're going to talk about some branding basics. Okay, team branding. What do you stand for? Basically, this is a more advanced way to motivate, and for some of you this may not apply. For those of you who are one or two people teams, team branding is important. If you get your processor and your transaction coordinator and yourself to really feel we are a part of this brand, well, it's powerful because then it's kind of an us against them and we're all in it for each other. It can be a lot of fun. If you do not have your marketing in place, you're missing a database or need a transaction coordinator, then you're not allowed to do the team branding. It's way too high a concept if you have not gotten your basic stuff in place. This is something that you want to do after you've really got your systems integrated, you're way on top of your leads, you know exactly what's going on in your pipeline. Team branding is kind of marketing level 2 or 3. It's for those who've built a team and need to get more buy-in, more energy, and more presence. Start branding by writing about what you stand for. Everyone on the team can help pitch in. What do you stand for? Who do they feel they are? What does the team do best? Make this clear in bullet points or statements. This is a statement kind of like a good neighbor or just do it. We kind of know like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. We know just do it is Nike. We want people within the team to recognize the team itself and relate to this. And then as you brand yourself in your community, people start to remember you as that brand. I have, for example, in here, name it or brand it, big, bad, and bodacious. And I kind of borrowed that. I think it was Tony Robbins who first said that. If big, bad, and bodacious is what your team has picked, You could be the BBB team and create BBB goals and have a few really big BBB goals that would stretch everyone. Create a really fun or funny reward gift if it's met. Make it fun. Who's the biggest BBB for the week or the month or the year, and they get a spa weekend or something. And team branding isn't easy, but it's very motivational. And after all, people don't quit jobs. They frequently quit managers. People will leave a job they're making good money at if they're unhappy at the place they're at. So in order to slow down attrition, branding can also help them feel that way, because if they leave the company, they lose that exclusivity and that inclusion. And that's important to keep some of the top producers around. Next, we're going to be talking about using the charter with your team no matter what size they are. And that's going to be managing managers again. Now that the charter is in place, you can use it for your monthly meetings. You can also have one-on-one meetings with the staff throughout the quarter to check in and see how they're doing. Making these accountability meetings can help, but they can also be very powerful if it's done in a more personal setting. Don't pull out the charter and start asking them, what are they doing about it? Don't say, why aren't you meeting these numbers? Do express congratulations for any successes, ask about any opportunities, and help that employee come up with an action plan to address any area they commit to improving. Encourage them by saying, you know, they can do it. Make sure these actions have a timeline. Make note of the timeline and check back with them. And this is your job as a manager, to make sure that you check back. You're managing by accountability, and that's the critical thing. We have to be accountable to our employees, or we're not doing our job. And that goes right back to managing your calendar, managing your time, and communicating professionally. If you're not doing that, your team is not going to take it seriously. Analyze what your team needs from each of the people in their group and make it clear to them. Sometimes holding a measuring stick to someone can help you decide whether they should be with the company or not. If you find they're not meeting the charter, they have a lot of excuses, because you're having regular meetings with them, you can have a one-on-one and see if there's something that you're missing that shouldn't be talked about in the manager's meeting, and really address these issues. We might find that that person can't grow with the company, and they may need to be moved off as well. Next, I want to talk a little bit about self-management and what I hear LO saying keeps happening from succeeding. Self-managing is a tough environment. Here's the 5 things that they may say. Management is not listening to me. Operations is not doing their job. I was promised things and they're not there. I've been working for this company for a year and they're just not giving me what they said they would. I have difficult situations daily. I'm burnt out. I have clients calling me and nobody's helping me solve these problems. I have realtors who are hounding me and just making bad situations. I'm so tired. I'm overwhelmed. I'm frustrated. And I hear this a lot. It's tough when you're by yourself in this environment, and we want to talk a lot about looking at some solutions to help you, solve some of these. This is really about managing teams, but I wanted to touch on self-management just for a second. First, management doesn't listen. We have choices. If you're in an environment where your manager doesn't listen, maybe they promised you a lot of things and they disappeared, or they promised they're delivering a little bit, maybe they're producing, they don't have time to help you, they just say, well, why don't you do it like so-and-so, or we've given you the tools, we can't help you any more than that. You need to create a list of issues. In some instances, I have my people create a list of what was promised to them, even going back and copying emails. We're not trying to confront management. We're trying to have a logical conversation about what the expectations were. So create a list of the issues that you're having. And if you can break it down into numbers, that's even more critical. If you can start saying, I'm closing 5 loans a month on average. Here's the issues I'm having. If I could resolve issues 1, 2, and 3, be it they promised you an assistant and they haven't come through, you could produce 10 more loans a month. And at 10 more loans a month, the bottom line is the company would make this much money. It could be very simple math. But if you take your list of issues and you equate it to dollar signs and you schedule a meeting with everyone concerned, or at least one person, and you say, here's the priority of the issues and how I need to get help on them, you're going to know whether that management team or that company is going to be there for you. But you've got to do the upfront work. Get the list of issues, get down what you were promised, schedule a meeting, create timelines that you need to see this change happen. Communicate those timelines to the management. Find an advocate in the management or corporate environment, somebody who understands and will go to bat for you. If you don't have an advocate, maybe see if other loan officers are having the same issues. Band together with them and take their top 3 issues and go as a group to the management and say, we need these things fixed. We've been promised them, whatever it is. And again, if you can break it down into production and how much money that's going to mean to the company, they're going to take it a lot more seriously because they are all about the money. And then lastly, you always have a choice to look for another company. In the last 12 months, I've had 7 people change companies, and sometimes the change works out fantastic. Sometimes we land and we're in the same situation. But if you've worked really hard to fix something and it absolutely isn't working for you, you do need to look at what your outside choices are. It's a really great time. There's a lot of new companies out there that are offering great benefits. So keep that in mind. Next is we're going to look about operations not doing their job. This can be really tough. This can make you feel like things are way out of your control because you're not doing the operations. This part of the business you can not run over and do by yourself. Communication is key here. Don't hide your head in the sand and pretend it's not happening like some people do, people I talk to every week. But make a list of what you should be doing with every loan prior to handing it into the processing team. Sometimes if we can do a better job of putting in a really good file, it may help operations. And then make sure you're doing it completely. It'll give you a leg to stand on when you go and start talking to them. Now, meet with your ops staff. Meet with the people, if you can, if they're in your area, or even over the phone, or set up Skype and have a little 15 to 20-minute meeting about what's important to them. Find out what you need to do to help them do a better job. Is it something that they're missing? Is there anything that you can do? They're going to want to be heard because frequently operations doesn't feel like they're heard. And they get a chip on their shoulder. Many of them are perfectionist personality types, and they tightly control their environment. They want to be heard. They want to be made to feel important. And there's a fine line between making them feel important and letting them be a prima donna. What you need to do is start communicating with them and opening up the lines of communication. And if you find that you're hitting a brick wall, then there's probably not a lot more you can do. But if you've not tried to work with your operations team before, I think it's a critical thing to do and to continue to grow your loan production. Create a loan process of your own and then show the operations team or individual, here's what I do on the front end. Sometimes if they know that you're doing this many steps, it really makes them feel like, wow, okay, the loan officer is doing a lot. They're not dumping it all on me. Sometimes they don't know what you do. You got to give them a peek behind the curtain. You know, the wizard's running the show here, and you are the wizard, and we want them to know that you're working hard. Lastly, we can create a reward system for your processor. If there isn't already a bonus structure in place for them, we can create one of our own. I'm not saying a per file, spiff that they get. I'm saying if you guys as a team, the 2 of you, or you and your 3-people team or whatever, meet a certain goal. Maybe you, for the first time, close 10 loans in a month. Maybe it's 20 loans in a month. What you could do is create a little reward package. Maybe it's a spa day and a $100 certificate or an Amex card or something, and spontaneously give this to the processor and write them a personal note that says, I so appreciate everything that you do. I think that you're just fantastic. I don't know what we would do without you. Here's a little extra appreciation, and call anytime if you want to talk. We really just appreciate you so much, and give it to them. These kinds of reward systems are unexpected and really welcome and really improve motivation and morale. Now, some of the other promised things that we were going to talk about self-managing, difficult situations and daily burnout, overwhelm and frustration, being promised things and they're not there. I would probably recommend that you're on next Tuesday's call. We're going to talk extensively about you as an individual feeling burnout and overwhelm, how to counter those feelings, how to get more of those things that you're being promised from your work, and we're going to work more on the daily intake of information and structuring your day. So that's probably a little bit too much for this particular call. We're just going to go on and open this up to ask for any live questions if you've been taking notes. Do you have any questions that I could answer based on the information that we had right now? Eric, do you have any questions?
Well, also, guys, if those of you on in attendance mode here, you do have the option to click in on a private chat as well. So, now is the time to open up the line. Well, this size of a call, it doesn't work very well to open up the lines for communication as far as audio, but please go ahead and take the moment to post your questions into the chat box. I'm going to make sure that everybody has the chat open for just a second, but also recognize that you do have the opportunity to type questions into me or Stephanie via the private chat function, which is one of the tabs at the top of the chat box. Looks like one of the first questions that's come across, Stephanie, for you to address is, how do you recognize and decide when it's time to add team members? When do you begin to realize that or how do you know when you're just overwhelmed and you're at your total capacity ceiling?
Well, that's a great question, because I've got some people who hit capacity at 5. I have some who hit capacity at 12. I think it's an individual choice. What I tell my clients, when you're working with the team that you've got, maybe it's you and a processor, and that's it, and you're starting to be overwhelmed. If you can't catch up with your leads, and you can't get information into your database, and you can't follow up with your marketing, and you can't leave your office to get new deals, that's when you hit the roller coaster that you mentioned earlier, Eric. You close 15, then you close 5. But maybe you're finding that you close 10, then you close 2. And that is not a healthy environment for you to be working. There's no consistency for you to be able to take care of your family. So I think as soon as you find that you are overwhelmed and can't grow the business is when you need to start thinking about when you need an assistant. I start off all of my clients with a budget. I need to know how much money you need to make every month to pay your bills. And that could include retirement, the mortgage, the car, cable, I don't care, groceries, get it in there. I need to know how much money you need to make. How many loans do you need to close to make that money? And then, so that's your peak to hit your monthly net that you need. Then, how many loans do you need over that? And how many are we capable of? It is a formula. A lot of people closing 5 loans pays their bills. Closing a 6th loan leaves them a little bit extra. Getting to 10 is really hard, but getting to 10, there's money left over inside of there. So now if we know how much you need to budget, we then figure out how much would an assistant cost. And an assistant, depending on where you're at in the country, is going to cost anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000. You can get cheaper, you can get more expensive, but I'm just rounding it around to $2,500. What I have my people do is we close as many loans as we can by managing our system, and we set aside 3 months worth of assistance pay. We get that into a separate account. Then we decide what kind of assistant do we want. We write the job description, we put the ad out, and we start interviewing. That way, when you bring somebody on board, you're not panicked about delegating. You're not panicked about, where's my money coming from? You've got that person paid for 90 days. So all you're doing is pushing, getting them on board, getting them delegated, getting yourself out of the office more, managing your leads better, getting more referral partner phone calls. And that is a healthy way to bring an assistant on board. If you have an assistant and you're afraid that you're not getting enough out of that person and you're still stuck in that overwhelm mode, that's when I recommend you go to the worksheet that you're going to get as somebody who's watched the webinar, and go and assess what you're doing every day, all day, and redline those things that are getting you money, or not making you money. Maybe you're going to get your own lunch. Redline that. That's not paying you. And greenline, hey, I made phone calls to my leads. I made phone calls to my referral partners. And then take the stuff that you have to do off the list, and all the rest of the stuff needs to be a part of your assistant's job description. And if you do that regularly, whether you have an assistant now or whether you're going to hire an assistant, you'll have a much better impact on how you're able to grow your business, get back to your leads, get to your referral partners. I hope that helps.
Definitely, definitely. Cool. Well, one of the other questions that came across in the private chat here is, you mentioned the weekly team meetings or the regular team meetings. What are some of the agenda topics, or what are some of the main talking points of some of those meetings? What are the ones that seem to have the most significant impact on increasing productivity and performance as a team?
Well, it's going to depend on the size of the team. Obviously, if it's managers meeting with managers, it's going to be a completely different concept. The meeting would be much more high level. If it's your team of 6 all the way down to 2, you're going to definitely want to focus on prioritization. And what I mean by that is, where are our loans at? You get the pipeline out, and I have several companies where I manage. I coach a partner, and I coach the operations person, and I coach the sales manager. And this company had only had team meetings on what production they closed. So say in early December, they're going to have a meeting on their pipeline report. Oh, we closed this many in November. Yet they never looked at what's in our pipeline for December, what are we going to close in January, and how can we get more closed now, and how can we solve the issues that are keeping us from closing those. So if you have a team of 3 of you, I would recommend, if it's the 3 of you, no more than once a week if you're bringing in a processor. If it's you and your transaction coordinator, I would literally have a meeting every single morning starting at 9 o'clock, get them in, and say, okay, what do we have to do today? Where are our loans? How are all the loans in the pipeline doing? I'm going to be giving you these 2 new files, and I want you to get that marketing piece out. Now your transaction coordinator knows what they need to do. You can go on and start calling on your referral partners to get more meetings, call back the leads you've got to call. So I hope I'm not a little bit all over the place in answering that. So sorry. But you want to make sure that the prioritization of the meeting is, where is production right now? What are we doing about increasing it? How are we building referral partner relationships? How are we getting more leads? And outside of that, the monthly meetings can be about higher level topics.
So it follows that 3-phase cycle we've all talked about, the vision, the obstacles, and the solutions, and cycling through it based on what's the highest priority issue at the moment. I love the suggestion of the daily briefing and debriefing. That's something that I find clients get a lot of value out along the way. Other questions, one of which posed by Earl. I'm assuming a client question that's come through for him multiple times. What are your thoughts on sharing an assistant or hiring a part-time assistant? I'm assuming you mean for the individual producer here. You're just the one-man wrecking crew or one-woman wrecking crew. Don't necessarily feel like you have the budget for a full-time assistant. What are your thoughts about a shared assistant or part-time assistant?
I actually just spoke with somebody this morning who is bringing on a part-time assistant to do their marketing, because they only have about 5 hours of marketing work a week, but it's still 5 hours that he can't seem to get to. I'm a big fan of sharing an assistant. There's a lot of people who are afraid to be managers by themselves. They've never employed somebody. They don't have maybe enough work themselves. Maybe they're between the 7 and 10 loans and they can't quite get over that hurdle. I think that sharing an assistant depends on the person you're sharing them with. And I'll go back to team charter. If I was going to be working with another loan officer and sharing an assistant, I would talk to that loan officer and say, what do we want to have happen here? Are we going to split this person's time? How is this person going to prioritize between the 2 of us? And are we going to block out that person's time and say, this morning from 10 to 12 she works on yours, and from 1 to 3 she works on mine? And just get the definition of responsibility for that staff person very clear with the person you're sharing. That's a priority. If you don't get that in place before that person comes on board, it's really hard to get it on afterwards. There's hurt feelings. So I think over-communicating is really important in this particular situation. A part-time person coming in, absolutely. It's a great. I actually have 2 people who are working with local colleges, and they have business interns. Those interns are getting great experience. It's going on their resumes. My people aren't paying for them, and they're getting the backup support where they're able to stash money away to bring a full-time person on when the intern is done. And that, but again, I'll go back to, if you've got a part-time person, You need to know exactly what that person's going to do when they're there. You need to write out exactly how to do those things and delegate correctly. Because a part-time person can come in and sit at a desk and do nothing, and then you're spinning your wheels feeling like I'm wasting their time if you haven't prepared before they come in. Hope that helps.
Okay. Awesome, awesome. Well, there's one more question in here. I want to see if we can sneak it in real quick. This means we may have to cut our a little bit of a session and a special guest wrap up to a little bit shorter here. But there's one more question come across, Stephanie, that posted here by Ryan. For a personal assistant who is new to the business, do you recommend signing them up for processor training or to ease them into the knowledge of the business through small hands-on task-by-task assignments? What do you find works the best?
Well, Ryan, I think that's a great question. What the question doesn't say is, what is this personal assistant going to be doing? If they are not going to be processing, they should not be signed up for processor training, in my mind. I think that it depends on what they're going to do. So if you want to post what that role is going to be, then that would equate to what kind of training you want them to do. I really believe in the hands-on. What exactly is this personal assistant supposed to do? So if they're going to be a little bit of a transaction coordinator, then they're going to be much more of a communicator role. You can have them sit with your processor, watch what the processor does, and learn what that processor needs from them, and have your processor train them the way they need them to be trained. So they start their own kind of language. What I do think is that if it's a personal assistant and you're bringing them on just to do processing for you, processor training is invaluable. Absolutely invaluable. If it's a personal assistant who's only going to be managing your marketing and answering your phone, then you're going to want to create scripts and lead intake forms and information that is going to help structure how they communicate to the outside world on your behalf. Then you can grow them into a transaction coordinator by handing them little by little more things to do. I don't know if that answers your question, but Ryan, if you want, we can talk offline specifically about what the role is for that personal assistant.
Definitely, definitely. Well, I think that's a good opportunity to transition. And just so everybody else in the audience or even those listening on recording know, we do have a lot of those document templates available in our Maximum Acceleration library. We've quite a voluminous resource library that we've developed over the years as a coaching team with a lot of different starting points for those types of things. But ultimately, the thing I want to make sure everybody understands is you've got to begin with that end in mind. What is the ultimate vision for that position? And like Stephanie suggested, I tend to refer to it as what we call the demo, do, debrief process. In other words, use the work that really needs to be done as your training materials, your content. That if you're going to have to do it anyway, use that real work, that review of that credit report, that ratio analysis, that actual functional step on that next deal that needs that work done that you eventually want delegated, use that real work as the training material for what you're going on with. Stephanie, you had a couple of special gifts and thank you offers for attendees and those listening on recording today. Why don't you go ahead and take just a couple of quick seconds here and introduce everybody to what's available between after the call, and then I'll jump in and we'll do some final wrap-up just as we get towards the end of today's session.
Okay, yeah, I know. I kind of went on and on, but there's so much that needs to go into team building and so many different sizes. Please, anybody on the call, if you have very specific questions that you want help with your team design, and I don't care if it's even managing your brother who works for you for 3 hours a week, I'm happy to help you with it. Bringing on somebody and having them help you is such a powerful thing. I did develop a team design worksheet. It's a super simple format that you can go in and create roles. You're going to really look at your own business and what your activities are and what you need to delegate that are not the things that aren't bringing you in business as much as getting out of that office would. And it's got 3 tabs to it, so that should be able to help you. If you have any questions about how to use that team design worksheet, please let me know. If you want help with budgeting and finding out when or whether you can afford an assistant, I'd be happy to help you with that. We are offering a free strategy session to anybody who's on the call. So like I told Ryan, if he wants more specifics on the personal assistant he may or may not have already brought on, I'd be happy to help him with that. And just thank you all so much for giving me the time, and this is such an important topic.
Awesome. Well, folks, just to reemphasize one important thing here, our goal of this webinar series was to create an ongoing community of learning to better ourselves in this industry, and I think we've made some very significant progress in that. I want to thank Stephanie for her time and energy in today's event. I want to reemphasize, by the way, there's no cost or obligation for the strategy session as well. If you are serious about taking your business to the next level, one of the things we've discovered over the years is that the best way to identify the true value of coaching, because it's such a dynamic process, is to actually experience it. And of course, that's something also that you'll get when you schedule a strategy session with Stephanie. If you would like one of those strategy sessions, feel free to go ahead and take advantage of that. One way you could do it is your web browser should be directed to the website you need to fill out. Just fill out this quick e-form on the website that just popped open in your browser. Take a couple of seconds. Or if you want to go ahead and post it into the Q&A section or chat section in this webinar format, we would love to be able to offer you one of those sessions with Stephanie, and she'll give you all the answers that you're looking for. Along the way, you'll talk a little bit about what coaching involves and what commitments are on both sides and whether it makes sense for you to move forward or not. Just as a last closeout clarification, by the way, the free gift that Stephanie mentioned, the team design worksheet, is going to be set up to be sent to you automatically in an email to come out a little later this afternoon, so be watching for that email. Otherwise, the final steps of what I wanted to make sure you guys are aware of, Stephanie alluded to it earlier in the conversation here. Next week's webinar is going to be about finding balance in this storm of unprecedented opportunity. Refers back to some of the concepts and topics that we talked about earlier in the series about time management, personal productivity. But this is really more about creating the personal space that you need and the recoup time, and how to keep it all moving in the right direction at the right time. So you don't knock it out of the park with business, but sacrifice your family in the process. And how do you keep your head on your shoulders without getting completely burned out and going nuts? And Stephanie's got some wonderful ideas for you next week that we'll be talking about, just how to keep it all moving forward and how to balance it all. I'm amazed by, Stephanie, how well you do this in your own personal life with managing, a full-time career, coaching both inside and outside the mortgage industry, as well as, a daughter who's in college and your own work on your masters and everything. You've become kind of a master of that concept, and I'm amazed to see how you do it. I'm also very impressed, and I'll tell you the last thing that I want to share with everybody in the audience today is the final thing I want you to decide is narrow this down to a course of action. We wouldn't be coaching if we weren't talking about making a difference in your business and in your life through what we've shared with you today. So I want to ask you to take just another 2 minutes before you jump into the next thing you're going to do in your day to take these 3 quick steps for yourself. Decide what was the most valuable concept or idea you heard in today's program. Whatever it was, pick the one thing you want to implement first. You can always come back to the recording of this program later and pick up all the additional ideas. There were hundreds of great ideas that Stephanie shared today. Pick the one that's most valuable to you in today's program. Then decide what specific action you need to take and by when you're going to have it completed. The bonus is pick an accountability partner. Decide who you want to hold you accountable to implementing that action item. One final comment or question. I'm going to leave the webinar open for just a few minutes here for us. If you do have additional questions that have come up just as we've been going through these couple of last-minute things, feel free to go ahead and post them in the Q&A here, and we'll make sure we get a copy of the chat log downloaded, and Stephanie and I'll work to make sure that we respond to those questions and get those issues addressed and answered for you. Otherwise, thank you again for your time and energy and your willingness to participate in the program that's going to help you take your business to the next level. Stephanie, any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience for today?
Not other than I think you made a great point. You guys, action. Massive action is needed to make change in your life, and it's really easy to keep doing the same things you're doing. You're on this call for a reason. This screen says putting it in play. Pick one thing, and do it, and you will have made progress. That's if you pick 5 things and do them, fantastic. If you pick 50, great. But if you're not doing anything to change, you're going to feel the same way you feel now in a month, in 6 months, in a year, and you're going to regret it.
Awesome.
That's all.
Awesome. Well, awesome. Thank you for your time today, Stephanie. Thank you for the wonderful program.